Media recognition from Bloomberg, Reuters, recycling trade publications, patented process for 100% recovery of critical metals, including cobalt, lithium, nickel, manganese, aluminum. American Manganese is focused on recycling lithium-ion batteries for electric vehicles. American Manganese trades on the TSX Venture, AMY, the US, AMYZF, and Frankfurt 2AM. For more information, visit AmericanManganeseInc.com or phone me, Larry Ray, at 778-574-4444.
You're listening to HowStreet.com radio, available online at TalkDigitalNetwork.com. Welcome to HowStreet.com radio, the online source for market opinions. Here is Jim Goddard.
My guest is Rick Ackerman, editor of the newsletter Rick's Picks, his website, rickackerman.com. He's speaking to us from the Jersey Shore, I believe.
Exactly, and always enjoy our chats. Jim, thanks for inviting me on.
Any concerns about one of the recent hurricanes sliding up the coast?
You know, I resolved a while ago to never look at the weather report, because whatever you're doing, even if it's a picnic in Illinois or a beach outing in New Jersey, there's always going to be something in a weather forecast to cast doubt on your plans. So I just drive, and even if my friends warn me, they say, oh, you know, if you drive from Florida to New Jersey now, you're going to meet up with Hurricane Ida as it moves, you know, tracks inland, whatever. But I just, no problem. The weather here has been nice. We've had some heavy rain and this and that. But even New Orleans, which took the brunt of it, seems to have survived.
Rick, something that you find interesting is how the stock market has continued to climb and survive over the last 12 years, but there's kind of a new theory about what could be behind the reason why it continues to climb. Can you maybe explore that theory for us?
Well, there was a terrific piece at Zero Hedge a couple of weeks ago by a guy named Sven somebody or other, and his simple but very plausible theory was that the S&P 500 is simply a proxy for the Fed balance sheet, and as long as the Fed is blowing out his balance sheet, you can put aside your 50 reasons why we should be in a bear market now. So it's still fun to pick a top, especially when you are looking at a market that is as grotesquely overvalued as this one is, and also if you can do it with butterfly spreads and things like that give you a very leveraged bet with almost no downside. So that's what we do, and just coincidentally, I've got a very, very compelling looking target in Apple up around 152 and change that coincides with a precisely similar target in the QQQs around 382 and change. So here we are within a micron of both of those targets. And, you know, even though I'm looking for higher on even the S&Ps, I sort of take things each in its own space, discreetly. And, so I'm getting short the Qs and Apple up here just in case.
So as long as, the Fed is involved in quantitative easing, just continue on pouring in money into the stock market, maybe a little less than before, but no problems?
Exactly. It's pointless to get all hot and bothered about, oh, this is the top or that's the top, because really this market doesn't respond in a rational way to anything anymore, really. It's just a function of monetization and a lot of money finding its way into the market. We've talked before about how some companies with literally tens of billions of dollars that they don't know what to do with, like Apple, going out and borrowing money. It's like they don't want to touch the good stuff that they're sitting on. They go out and borrow trash money from the Federal Reserve, or from their bank, which has been enabled to loan by the Federal Reserve. And so with all that going on, it's hard to envision an end to it all. Although if you've lived for more than a decade, you know that it does end. That all bull markets come to an end, and this one has had a lot of longevity, but it will end too.
Now, if the market is run by the Fed, is it? You're not saying it's run by the Fed, but it's so closely connected it might as well be. Why do we even need a Fed?
Well, the Fed is really the underlying assurance to all the chimps who manage our money, and they have a lot of they have different elements in their support system. I used to work for one of those elements. It was a research firm called Grassroots Research that used to put out bullish reports on everything, so that the money managers could say, well, look, we had a very bullish prospectus from this research company, and so research simply supports whatever state of mind exists anyway. And it'd be a little unseemly for the Fed to cop to the fact that the only thing they really care about is stock prices in the real estate market. But that's the fact. They can talk about employment and the pandemic and this and that, but as long as they keep stock prices pumped, they can sustain the illusion that everything's going to be all right. And this guy Sven mentioned that the market has a curious way. If it gets sold off, let's say, I think it had sold off a couple Fridays earlier, and somehow the Fed timed. They don't go in there with anything as crude as plunge protection team money. They just have some low-level Fed functionary go out to a Rotary Club luncheon and say something to the effect that, well, this tapeworm, we're not going to really do any tapeworming for at least till the end of 2022 or maybe 2023, or who knows, if the pandemic, if this Delta variant really takes root, might be 2024 or 25 where we're looking at doing some serious tapeworming. So the market, I've got an essay out on my front page, rickackerman.com, that explains it all, that it's not like the fund managers really believe the Fed or believe that the Fed is saying anything important when Jerome Powell gets out, as he did recently, and said, who knows what he said. But they buy the market anyway on something that seems to be saying, well, we're not going to be thinking too much about this taper for a while. And the money managers buy the market not because they believe that they need to take the Fed seriously, but that all the other idiots who are in the same business are going to take the Fed seriously, and so they all sort of react according to the normal protocol. When the Fed is dovish, you push the market up, and hawkish, you push it down, and that's the way it goes. Nobody really believes the game seriously, but you have to take it seriously anyway because you're afraid the next guy will.
Has the stock market become disconnected from the crude oil market?
I don't think it can get that disconnected because crude oil winds up being a huge piece of the leveraging out that's been done to essentially support the expansion of credit and the money supply. At some root level, you have to tie this debt blowout to some form of collateral, and it just so happens that coming out of the housing crash of 2008, 9, or 7 and 8, the smart guys looked around and said, okay, what can we hawk up to our eyeballs this time? And the energy patch was the answer. So we definitely need higher energy prices because we've got so much capital tied up in energy production, and so much of our stake in our future is tied to energy resources that it's very often the tail that wags the dog.
We'll have more with Rick Ackerman right after this.
Don't miss out. Stay informed. Receive the HowStreet.com weekly recap with thought-provoking podcasts, radio, and articles delivered to your inbox. Sign up for the HowStreet.com weekly recap on our homepage at HowStreet.com.
Welcome back. We're speaking with Rick Ackerman. Rick, we have supply shortages all over the place there on the Jersey Shore. You can't find a new surfboard. You can't get a new car. People are paying a fortune for used vehicles. What's this doing to the supply chain, and what's this doing to the economy?
It's pretty amazing. We've got Powell out there saying that inflation will remain moderate, and some of the people who have agreed with them make the point that yes, some of the things that are pushing prices higher are anomalous, meaning a lot of them are linked to supply shortages in basic materials. However, it's starting to look more and more like these shortages. They're cropping up pretty much everywhere, and it gets kind of like whack-a-mole. You really can't. The shipping in particular, there's some goods that get shipped from Asia that now cost 10 times as much to ship, and so the shipping tie-ups have to do with people at the loading docks getting sick with COVID. And in fact, I think I read somewhere where China closed one of its biggest ports for a little bit just because one person had gotten COVID. So they're basically announcing to the world that they're going to be very stringent about those things, even if there's a severe economic impact. So we've got shortages arising in so many places. I guess the shipping part of it is really the key element, but there's no way to get around it, and you can sort of see it stretch into forever. Really, it's not like the shortages are all going to go away, because each one kind of impacts so many others in ways that are impossible to predict. So you wind up here on the Jersey Shore, with the surfboard shortage, because nobody can get their hands on any fiberglass, if you can believe that. And of course, the car thing. My brother just ordered a car, and he was given a wait of 16 weeks. So that's very real. And Toyota has announced big cutbacks, and that it's more than a ripple through the economy when a big car manufacturer like Toyota basically throws in the towel, or almost does. You're looking at supply shortages and shortages in basic materials going out possibly for years.
And of course, if people are buying used vehicles, they'll break down more often. Will there be parts to repair those used vehicles?
Yeah, and the silver lining is that all these Hummers and fabulous new war hardware that was acquired by the Taliban, they're not going to be able to get parts, even when they sell these things to the Chinese and to the Iranis. It's still going to be a problem. There was a photo yesterday of a U.S. helicopter flying over Afghanistan, and I guess the implication, the inference was that if the Taliban can make a helicopter fly, they can certainly make war with the Humvees. But that remains to be seen. But anyway, nobody can get parts for nothing now.
Yeah, and I'm an aircraft enthusiast. You can buy an old MiG and apparently a Phantom jet, because they weren't computerized, but any jet model made after them, so we're talking early 1960s technology, is so computerized a civilian can't really own it anyway, because you couldn't afford the computers to run it or have the people with the training to repair it. So and these high maintenance things are, as they like to call them, hangar queens or maintenance pigs.
Yeah, I mean, I remember the days I had a BMW with a 4-cylinder engine back in the 60s, and it was pretty easy to work on. But these days, I don't even, you lift the hood and there's so many things that are unfamiliar, and I can't remember what percentage of of the things that a car does are essentially run by chips. But you really need some very specialized equipment just to work on them.
Yeah, my dad, master mechanic, same thing. Because there were so many computerized parts in his new truck, he would take it into the shop. They'd use their computer to diagnose it. Then he could switch out the parts and order them, and actually do the repair. But he said, I don't dare mess around with it. It's so delicate.
Right, and they charge an arm and a leg for the diagnostics equipment, and it certainly raises the bar for a lot of independent mechanics who want to get in the business. There was a time when anybody could be a garage. You could operate a mechanics shop out of your own garage, but these days, how do you fix something like an Audi with the old tool set?
Maybe somebody will come up with a simple car again instead of trying to turn it into your living room entertainment center. Wouldn't that be a concept? A car you can fix yourself. The dealers wouldn't sell it though, because that's where they make their money.
Well, my son works as a wrangler out in Steamboat Springs, and he's got the cheapest source of transportation he can find, and the repairs are, well, when you need them, you got a veterinarian to do them.
Yeah, I was going to say its name is Jesse and it comes when it's called. Now, with all these supply shortages, that's going to boost prices. Is inflation a real long-term thing here? I know you were worried about deflation. Has it changed that story?
Well, I'm not so much worried about deflation as predicting that there's no way to avoid it. I see it as absolutely inevitable, but it's an end-game scenario. It's really at a point where, well, a bear market could put us instantly overnight into a deflation, because the inflation we're experiencing, it's certainly not being driven by higher wages. The wages are only starting to lift, but at the very lower end. And it doesn't really make much, it doesn't really have much impact. But, so I see that inflation is, it's going to be with us for a while, but it's somewhat limited because when the grocery stores, you know yourself, when you go in to shop for groceries, you think, who can afford this stuff anymore? But people do. It's like gasoline, whatever the price, $3, $4, $5, even $6 a gallon, which we haven't seen yet. If we ever do, you wonder, well, what's the breaking point for paying up for pretty much everything if nobody's really getting paid commensurately? So, the answer, the inflation is coming primarily out of, asset growth. And that, of course, as I mentioned, is limited by stock market prices and the price of real estate as well.
China's service industry suffering a downturn, and China cracking down on tech firms, educational companies. What's the story there? What's China's real story? Are they trying to find scapegoats to blame for a downturn in their economy?
Well, I've never had a good word to say about China. I think they lie, cheat, and steal no matter what business they're in. And they've stolen so many patents with U.S. companies that were required to partner with Chinese companies. And that's where we lost control of all the patents. But I have to say that in their current, China 4.0 or whatever version they're on, they're doing everything right. They're doing it not just right, but honestly. The crackdown on all the tech purveyors was, and I don't mean companies that make real things. I'm talking about, companies that make BS, like U.S. companies, big advertising firms like Google and Facebook, and food delivery companies that never make any money. The whole digital mania, the online business mania that has gripped U.S. investors for so long is just something the Chinese want no part of. So they basically said, we're not going to allow all of our capital to be shifted into these garbage companies that really do nothing for the world. I would I'd even put Google in that category. It's just a big advertising company that has learned how to do it very efficiently, and the same for Facebook. But they're not really contributing anything to the world, certainly not in the way of life-changing technologies and things like that. So the Chinese are basically saying that's where we want the money to go. We don't want it to go into garbage digital online purveyors of airware or whatever they're selling. We want to put in real companies that make real things that can change the world. So that's one thing they're doing honestly. And the other part of it, you find probably many American parents who envy this. The Chinese have just really cracked down on video game play. So the rule is, I think, something like the kids can only do it on weekends, and they're limited to 3 hours per week or something like that with the video games. And you think, well, what kind of totalitarian country could dictate something like that? Could say no kids are allowed on the internet except on Fridays and Saturdays, and then for a limited time. But in that particular instance, you kind of you could get to thinking, well, maybe we need a little more dictatorship here in the U.S.
Again, it'd be interesting how they're going to enforce it, but of course, the Chinese government employs millions of people to monitor social media. So no doubt if your kid's playing a game, especially team play with other youngsters, they're going to spot that. What do they expect these kids to do? Are they supposed to hit the books or gasp, go outside and play?
I'll tell you what they do. If you sit next to them on BART, in the Bay Area, I remember looking over at whoever was sitting in the next seat had a book open that had to do with surfactants at the molecular level. It was some very esoteric textbook, and I'm thinking, you never see a Caucasian faced with a book like that open. And I guess it's sort of reverse racist to even say that, but they study hard. And when they come over here, and go to MIT and Caltech, it's not to party, it's really to learn.
Well, UBC used to be a party school, but with the high tuition fees they charge university students, if you're going to spend all that money, you better learn something. If you want to drink, quit school.
Yeah, we're definitely there now. I mean, I think that the colleges, they've had a nice run with their little hoax, really, of selling degrees in sociology and art history for what amounts to $200,000 to $300,000 at a private 4-year school. But parents just aren't buying that anymore, literally. And I guess everybody still wants to get their kid into Harvard, and it doesn't hurt to make the kind of friends you'll make in that school. But everybody's looking twice at going into Hawk and paying off student loans at 8%, because who knows? I mean, the next round of student loans may start the slate clean, and they'll actually have to be repaid. So the colleges are on the losing end right now of parental discretion, in that no parent is going to send his kid to school to party for 4 years, with the tuition being what it is.
Well, unless they're already terrifically wealthy, in which case the kids are just going to college to socialize, because the parents are just doing it so they can say, my kid goes to Harvard.
Yeah, and I guess there's a boost there on graduation, because the kid gets to work for his summer internship is in, let's say, in the familial network of companies. But even so, just by and large, the college as an investment has come under scrutiny that it's really over. It's avoided for a long time, and I think that the whole way that education takes place on college campuses is going to have to change. A lot of it will probably shift online, and I think that the high premium schools will still get higher tuitions, but I think they'll all have to start offering online, because that's where it's easiest to teach.
And they'll also have to advertise, this is where our grads got jobs, like they do at the technical colleges like the BC Institute of Technology. They can say, honestly, 90% of our grads were employed within a year of graduation.
Yeah, and that's going to change too. I think the prestige of being in certain fields, like if you say, my kid right out of college got a job as he's an investment banker at Morgan Stanley or whatever, and I think that's all well and good in a bull market. But in a bear market, you're not going to brag about your kid being an investment banker. There's not going to be any money in it, no sign-up bonuses or anything like that. And who knows, that things could shift so egregiously that we might start to give engineers and students in the sciences and math the respect that they've always deserved.
Rick, thank you so much for chatting with us.
Always a pleasure, Jim. I enjoy our conversations very much.
My guest has been Rick Ackerman, editor of the newsletter Rick's Picks, his website, rickackerman.com. If you have any questions for Rick or any of our other guests, we'll gladly ask that question for you. If you send it to info@howstreet.com. Our YouTube channel is Talk Digital Network. Find us on Twitter @HowStreet. We're also on Facebook. I'm Jim Goddard. Thank you for listening.
Comments made on HowStreet.com radio are an expression of opinion only and should not be construed in any matter whatsoever as recommendations to buy or sell any financial instrument at any time. Available online at TalkDigitalNetwork.com. HowStreet.com radio is a production of HowStreet Media Incorporated.